All right, legends, grab yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and picture this. It's America in the late 1950s. The Cold War is in full swing. People are building nuclear bomb shelters in their backyards. Television is becoming the dominant form of entertainment. And if you wanted to talk about political corruption, mob violence, authoritarian governments, or the darker side of American society, well, good luck getting that past the sponsors. So one writer came up with a brilliant solution. If you can't talk about humanity directly, talk about aliens instead. If you can't criticize society, set the story on another planet. And if you can't point a finger at politics, create a fictional dictatorship. And from that act of creative rebellion came one of the greatest television series ever made. This week at the Alternative Pub, there's a signpost up ahead, and our next stop is the Twilight Zone. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Or you can just call me a tosser in the comments. It's up to you, really. Anyway, let's get into it. Before there was the Twilight Zone, there was Rod Serling. And Rod Serling was not someone who liked being told what he could and couldn't write. The man had served during World War II. He had seen violence and he had seen prejudice. He'd seen what people were capable of when fear took over. And when he entered television writing during the 1950s, he wanted to write serious drama about the real world. The problem? Back then, sponsors had enormous influence. If a story made advertisers uncomfortable, it could be altered, watered down, or killed entirely. Imagine spending months writing a thought-provoking, powerful drama, only to have somebody from a soap company say, "Could we make it less controversial? Could we change the ending?" Understandably, Rod Serling got increasingly frustrated with all of this. But then he realized something. If he wrapped his ideas in science fiction and fantasy, he could get away with pretty much anything. One of the smartest things about the Twilight Zone is that most episodes appear simple on the surface. A strange visitor arrives, an alien lands, a man travels through time, a mysterious object appears, or a small town faces an unusual situation. Except those stories often weren't really about what they appeared to be about. The science fiction was the bait, but the message was the hook. Serling understood that audiences would happily watch a story about aliens if it was entertaining, but what they might not realize until the end was that the episode was actually about prejudice or mob mentality or political power or human cruelty. The fantastic elements of the show acted like a sort of camouflage, and because they were disguised as fantasy, they often slipped past the gatekeepers. Now that's genius writing. You can't understand the Twilight Zone without understanding the Cold War. The fear of nuclear annihilation hung over everyday life. People built bomb shelters, children practiced duck and cover drills, governments warned of infiltration and subversion. Fear became part of the cultural wallpaper. And nowhere is that captured better than the Twilight Zone episode, The Shelter. On the surface, it's a simple story. A suburban neighborhood gathers for a birthday party when reports emerge that nuclear missiles may be heading for the United States. One family has a fallout shelter, the others don't. What follows isn't a story about nuclear war, it's a story about panic and about how quickly civilization can crumble when fear enters the room. These are neighbors, friends, people who have shared meals together. Yet at the moment survival is at stake, those masks begin to slip. It is one of the most brutally honest examinations of human nature the show ever produced. And honestly, it still feels frighteningly relevant today. One of the recurring themes throughout the Twilight Zone is prejudice, and while many episodes approached it indirectly, some tackled it head on, and one of the most powerful examples of this is the episode I Am the Night, Color Me Black. The story centers around a small town preparing for an execution, but as hatred consumes the community, an unnatural darkness begins spreading across the land. The sun itself seems unable to break through it. Serling wanted to show how prejudice itself becomes a kind of darkness. And then there was the episode The Encounter, which was so controversial it disappeared from syndication for decades. The story places a Japanese-American man and a World War II veteran together in a room where tensions reach boiling point. It's uncomfortable, tense, and deliberately so. It explored wounds left by the war in ways that television at the time really attempted. One thing that might surprise modern viewers is how often the Twilight Zone explored vanity, the obsession with appearance, popularity, the desperate need for approval. And nowhere is that more famous than the episode The Eye of the Beholder. It follows a young woman undergoing medical procedures because society considers her appearance unacceptable. And as the story unfolds, Serling asks a simple but powerful question. Who decides what's beautiful, and what happens when society demands absolute conformity? It's one of the most iconic episodes in television history because the message remains timeless. Today we've got filters, social media, influencers, and algorithms all rewarding appearances. The technology has changed, but the pressure hasn't. Then there's the episode The Masks. A wealthy patriarch gathers his greedy relatives and instructs them to wear grotesque masks throughout the night if they wish to inherit his fortune. What follows is one of the darkest morality plays in the entire series, because in the end, the masks reveal the ugliness wasn't on the outside, it was always within. One of my favourite aspects of the Twilight Zone is its sense of moral justice. The Twilight Zone is a place where actions eventually catch up with people, and nowhere is that more clearer than the episode Judgment Night. It follows a man trapped aboard a ship, endlessly reliving a doomed voyage. As the story unfolds, we learn that this isn't a random punishment, it's judgment, a haunting exploration of guilt and accountability, the kind of story that lingers long after the credits roll. And then there's Death's Head Revisited. And honestly, this might be one of the most powerful episodes the show ever produced. It follows the story of a former German officer returning to a concentration camp years after the war. What begins as a nostalgic visit soon turns into something much more unsettling. Serling wasn't interested in letting history be forgotten. He wanted audiences to remember, and it's one of the strongest examples of moral seriousness that often sat beneath the show's fantasy surface. One of the most fascinating themes the Twilight Zone often explored was authoritarianism. Serling warned audiences repeatedly about blind obedience, groupthink, and the surrender of individuality. Few episodes illustrate that better than The Obsolete Man. In a totalitarian future society, a librarian is considered obsolete by the state. His crime is knowledge and independent thought. It's one of Serling's most direct attacks on authoritarian governments, and it's delivered through one of the finest performances in the show's history. Then there's the episode The Mirror. A revolutionary leader takes power and discovers a mysterious mirror that reveals his future assassins. The more he seeks to eliminate threats, the more paranoid and isolated he becomes. The episode explores one of history's oldest lessons. Sometimes the people who overthrow tyrants become tyrants themselves. And that was something that Serling understood all too well. more than 60 years later, people are still watching the Twilight Zone, and with good reason. The special effects might be dated, the filming might belong to another era, but the ideas are timeless, and the stories, they still have something to say. The genius of Rod Serling was when he figured out how to tell important stories at a time when powerful people were trying to make those stories impossible to tell. He turned science fiction into an act of defiance, and in my humble opinion, that was punk rock. Anyway, let me know in the comments what are some of your favorite Twilight Zone episodes, and anyway, cheers.